Russia was built for the helicopter, or so said Mikhail Mil, and today's helicopter was perfect for the Russian wilderness. Small, robust, and reliable. The first Soviet mass-produced helicopter was a lovable little helicopter. Even though it was a small, simple helicopter, the Soviets found many uses for it, including medical, civilian transport, and even in an attack capacity. Development of the Mi-1, NATO designation Hare, started shortly after the end of World War II, with the first flight occurring in 1948. Even though in 1949 two prototypes crashed, production started with a small run of only 15 machines in the early half of 1950. After being presented to Joseph Stalin himself, production was increased, with the Mi-1 entering full production in 1954. The Mi-1 featured an all-metal skinned, fully enclosed fuselage. It was powered by a 575 horsepower radial engine. Given its small size, it really couldn't carry a lot of payload, only about 500 kilograms or 1100 pounds. The Mi-1 had a lot of variants produced, and I mean a lot. I'll start with the more standard and move to the more weird ones later. The Mi-1T quickly replaced the Mi-1. It featured extra equipment, including a full radio, blind flying instruments, and a more reliable engine. The Mi-1A had further increased reliability and an extra 160-litre or 42-gallon external fuel tank. The Mi-1M was introduced in 1957 with an enlarged cabin, a more powerful engine, and seating for 3 passengers behind the pilot. It could also be fitted with 2 external side capsules for injured people or mail. The Mi-3 featured a new 4-blade rotor, a larger cabin, and a modified fuselage, allowing for 2 side gondolas to be fitted for transporting wounded people. The gondola's front was glazed, allowing a paramedic in the helicopter to observe the patients mid-flight. The SM-2 was a Polish development of the Mi-1. It featured a stretched fuselage, allowing the helicopter to accommodate 4 passengers in addition to the pilot. The craziest variant, in my opinion, was the Mi-1Mu, a light attack helicopter. Actually, the Soviets' first attack helicopter. It could be fitted with infantry machine guns, 100-kilogram bombs, containers for various purposes, and even anti-tank guided missiles. Ultimately, it did not enter production due to its lack of payload and the ending of the Mi-1's production. It's still a fascinating variant, as some of the missiles it carries look gargantuan in comparison to the little heli. There were civilian versions created, like the Mi-1 MNKH, which was used by Russian airline Aeroflot. It was also used for agricultural work. None of these variants were particularly fast, with the Mi-1M being able to only reach a speed of 190 km an hour with a cruising speed of 140 km an hour. A large number of countries used the Mi-1. From a lot of Eastern Bloc countries, like East Germany, Poland, Hungary, etc., to some strange ones, like North Korea and North Vietnam. The Mi-1 was not very powerful, but neither were a lot of early helicopters, as is the limitation of using small rotary engines. That's why during the 50s, Mil began developing a helicopter featuring twin turbine engines that would produce 40% more power than the Mi-1's engines for barely half the weight. The result was a payload capacity more than double that of the Mi-1. Mil moved the engines overhead and altered the fuselage, allowing for more internal payload. This is what gives the Mi-2 its rather tall appearance. The Mi-2 first flew in 1963 and was designed for the same purpose as the Mi-1, mainly for light utility duties. Early prototypes featured the same rotor, transmission, and tail unit as the Mi-1. After trials, the wooden main rotor the Mi-1 used was replaced by an all-metal design. As Russian plants were occupied with producing the Mi-8 and other heavy-lift helicopters, like the Mi-6, Mil reached an agreement with WSK Swidnik to produce the Mi-2 in Poland, and they took over production in 1964. The first production helis featured 400 horsepower engines, but from 1974 they were upgraded to 450 horsepower. Another upgrade was the use of fiberglass for the main rotor, tail rotor, and stabilizer, to simplify production and to increase performance. Yet again, a lot of variants were produced of this helicopter. Let's go from basic to bizarre. The Mi-2M was a basic upgrade variant, upgrading the engines from 400 horsepower to 450 horsepower. The Mi-2S was a variant developed by Poland, which was an ambulance helicopter capable of carrying 4 stretchers in the cargo compartment. The Mi-2RL was a search and rescue variant that had an onboard winch, rescue and medical equipment, as well as searchlights, illuminating rockets, and a search radio compass. The Mi-2CX was an agricultural variant used for spraying operations. It came in 3 different varieties: normal spraying, pollination, or for spreading fertilizer. The Mi-2T was a transport variant that could hold 8 passengers, or 700 kilograms or 1,543 pounds of cargo internally, or 800 kilograms or 1,763 pounds externally slung. The Mi-2URP was a fire support helicopter that could be fitted with a 23mm cannon, 2 RPK machine guns, and 4 wire-guided anti-tank missiles. The helicopter could even be fitted with 2 100-kilogram bombs. You know we're getting weird when the weirdest one wasn't the attack version. The Mi-2 Plantain was a mine-laying variant that was capable of laying 120 ground or 180 underground anti-tank mines. It's very easy to spot this variant given the pipes sticking out of the fuselage. The MR2RHR was a version designed to conduct radiation chemical reconnaissance, essentially using special equipment to take and analyze air samples. The Mi-2X was a variant designed to set up smoke screens. It had 2 long pipes connected to the exhaust. Diesel would be pumped into the exhaust and produce a thick white smoke. Like the Mi-1, a lot of countries used the Mi-2. I thought I would just touch on North Korea's use of the Mi-2, as funnily enough, it's still in operation today. During the late 70s, early 80s, the North Korean Air Force purchased an initial shipment of 60 Mi-2 helicopters, with subsequent batches being purchased in later years. Today, it's estimated that the North Korean Air Force has about 140 total Mi-2s in service. The North Koreans use them in a number of roles, including liaison, attack, training, transportation, and VIP services. It could also be possibly used in an electronic warfare role, but this hasn't been confirmed. In 2012, a video even emerged of a North Korean Mi-2 firing an ATGM. Also, funnily enough, North Korea still had a debt of $4.3 million to Poland for the helicopters as of 2012. Weirdly, in 2015, a Ukrainian company, the Motor-Sick company, produced a new variant of the Mi-2 called the Mi-2 MSB, which was equipped with new engines and armament. The engines were 15 horsepower more powerful, with fuel consumption 27% lower and weighing 25 kilograms or 55 pounds lighter. It features hardpoints allowing for rocket pods, grenade launchers, and machine guns to be mounted. It also featured IR jamming equipment and flares. What's weird is that it doesn't feature any of the optical systems you would find in more attack/scout helicopters. In fact, it lacks any sort of modern targeting or observation devices. It should be noted that this variant is the first step in a modernization program planned by the Motor-Sick company. But it's still strange to see this nearly 60-year-old design get a new lease on life. I find these 2 helicopters to be incredibly fascinating. As to me, I don't see the purpose of such a small, low-payload helicopter, and yet they were both incredibly successful, with some 2,600 Mi-1s being produced from 1950 till 1965, and nearly 5,500 Mi-2s being produced between 1965 and 1988. They were workhorses of the Soviet Union, robust and versatile. If you need a small payload delivered in a tight space, these little helicopters were perfect. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.